how's it going? Welcome to Code Stroll. This is part 3 where we are going to be discussing about single page application using React.js. In part 2, we did talk about this same application, same project using vanilla JavaScript. The only difference this time is we are going to be using React.js. So this React.js is simply a JavaScript written library, just a basic JavaScript program written by some great people to help developer. Uh, what do I say that it just helps developers? Well, that just simply means that it writes code for us. Yes, in part 2, we had to write everything from absolute scratch. Whatever code that was needed to run that project, we had to write it ourselves. And you will see we'll be delegating some part of that to a library called React.js. Of course, React.js is a library, and like every other library, it will expect you to write code in a specific manner, which we'll learn moments later. But you just need to understand that it just writes code on our behalf. Just writes code for us. Some part of the code we have to write, and some will be written by React.js. Since we already have covered that full project and written that code ourselves in part 2, we will know exactly what kind of code React.js writes for us. So if you haven't watched part 2, you need to take a look at that because this is just in continuation of that. So let's kick things off over here. And before we go ahead, and let me just take you to the Google Chrome, because if you remember in part 2, whatever basics of JavaScript we learned, we had written JavaScript in that console over here. So that simply means this Google Chrome has a built-in compiler that understands JavaScript for us. Can we say that same thing for our computer? I don't think so, because we haven't run JavaScript on our computer. We have written JavaScript on our computer just like the way we did in part 2, where in that file, if you remember, in that index.html, we had written some JavaScript over there, and we can write JavaScript in simple Notepad as well. But the question is, will we be able to run it? The answer is no. We need a compiler to run JavaScript on our computer. And this React.js is just a JavaScript written library. So if we have to leverage the power of React.js, we need a compiler on our computer machine. So the first thing we need to do is we need to install that compiler on our computer machine, and that compiler is called as Node.js. This Node.js is the first thing that we need to install. And how can we do it? Let's just do one thing over here. We need to create that folder over here, just like the previous parts. New folder. I will create it, part 3 over here. And we'll be opening it. Here we go. We need to turn it open in our cursor code editor. Here we go. So we have this turned open over here. If you remember, we have this AI friend of ours, and we can shoot down a question that you might have already installed Node.js on our computer. How do I know if I have Node.js installed on my computer? Here we go. Waiting. If I Node.js installed on my computer. Okay, I need to run this node-v to know and check if I have Node.js installed. As already given this bunch of options, just goes in depth, really good. You must try it out. So How do I know it? I need to open the terminal and my cursor. How can I do that? Control and backtick, which is just left of that one on our keyboard. Here we go. I have this over here. Node dash V. Here we go. I have this installed on my computer. For for you, if you haven't got it installed, you need to shoot down another question over here that how do I install latest Node.js on my computer? Because that is a prerequisite. Without that, we won't be able to install and run React.js on our machine. I hope you grab that. So let's go ahead and delete it. Let's go ahead and kill the terminal as well. Let's go back to our Safari over here. So we have done this. So the next thing we need to do is we need to install this React.js on our machine, and we will be doing it with the help of npm. So what is npm? Is Node Package Manager. We have this node name in it, and package is just a JavaScript program. So can we say this React.js is also a package? Absolutely. React.js is also a package, and whatever packages you will be installing in your developer's journey, you will be installing it with the help of npm. Of course, there are many other packages now. For now, the basic is npm, which will help you grab the basics well. So this Node Package Manager will let you install React.js on our computer or any other JavaScript library or program you need to install on your machine. You will be leveraging the power of npm Node Package Manager. So let's go ahead and kick things off in our cursor. Again, open the terminal, control backtick, and here we have this. Now we need to write a command npm create wheat @latest. This will let us install React.js on our machine. What is Wheat? Well, Wheat is just a bundler that lets us install React.js. It just helps in the installation of React.js on our computer. You'll get to more in depth with your AI, but for now, for this video, we are just learning the basics of React.js. And to install React.js on our computer, you need to have this command ready. Let's hit enter. Okay, why? So project name, I do want to name this project as part 3. So if you want to keep the same name over here, just tap in dot. Okay, here we go. Now hit tab, package name is okay with part 3. I need to pick React over here since we are going to be using React. Now I need to use JavaScript. Here we go. No. Yes. Here we go. Installing dependency with npm. We got it? It seems so. We got it. So just simply just hide this terminal. Again, tap Control plus backtick. This will hide it. So you will see something like this over here. I know this might just baffle you initially, but you just need to click on this like src for now and just tap on it, app.jsx, and you need to select everything, Control Command plus A, and hit delete. Just delete everything. And in app.css, you also need to delete and get rid of everything, whatever you see down there. Command plus A and delete. Index.css, Command A, delete. Now get to this main.jsx over here. What you need to do is you need to delete this index.css. There we go. As you can see, this is important app from app.jsx. Now this is the file. As you can see, we have it over here. Okay. So what we need, whatever code, our application will be needing, will be writing in this app.jsx. And for this project as well, we'll be writing everything in this project. Like I said in the beginning, every library has its own rules and do's and don'ts, and we have to learn it if we want to use the power of that particular library. Since we want to use the power of React.js, we have to write code in a particular manner, which we'll be writing down there. So for now, we need to understand one thing. Let's just go back to our Safari over here. So the one thing you need to understand while writing code in any library, that for React.js, if we talk about the specific library, this has three features over here, like state, and we'll have component. There we go. Component. We have library. No, it's re-rendering. So this is what we have. These are like the three basic pillars of React.js: state, component, and rendering. In this particular video, we are going to be learning about component and state, which will cover the absolute basics of React.js, and will make sure that you grab the absolute basics in a really good manner, so you can just build up a very, very strong and high-rise building over it. So let's just go ahead. So here, if you remember, in our project, we had different tabs like pages, like home page, about page, and contact page. So home, about, and contact, we call them as components. We have home page component, we have about page component, and we have contact page component as well. We'll be writing everything over here. By the way, if I just go ahead and write RFC, you can see I have this over here. This is a snippet. If I tap on it, here we go. We have this code written over here. Let's just style it better. So we have this over here. So what is this? Well, this is the way React.js writes code. It expects you to write code in this manner. And by the way, what I did with that RFC is an extension. So if I tap on extension over here, I have got this ES7 Plus React extension over here that allows me to fetch those snippets for you by just tapping on RFC. So you can install it as well. Will be handy for you. Let's go back. So you need to understand this, that this is the component that we will be finally rendering in our project. As you can see, it exports this component over here. And in main, we import that component, which is exactly this app.jsx, and we use this component like this. This like opening and closing, and we just close it down with a slash over here. And this is the way we use components. And whatever we have in this component will be rendered eventually. And what we have written app. We can just change it, flip it out, but high there. So we have changed it, and let's see if this gets rendered in our final project. Now again, hit that Control plus backtick key. So this is where our website gonna get finally rendered. This is just the address of our uh, project that we have over here, this dummy React project. Let's just go ahead and check this out if this is working fine. Tap on it, hit copy, and turn it open in Google Chrome over here. As you can see, we have this hi there written over here. Let's just go back. Since it's working, let's just hide this terminal by again tapping on Control plus backtick. So this is working fine right now. So now when we have, let's just make sure we just get this downwards. So here, if you remember, I talked about those homepage, about, and contact sections. They are literally our components. We have to take them as components. And how can we write another components? Since you already remember, we just tapped on RFC. Here we go, we got this component. We just need to change the name over here. We'll keep the name as home page. So we have this home page written over here. Let's just, analyze this, our component over here. As you can see, just return out, explicit return over here, just simple brackets, normal JavaScript that we have grabbed till now, and it just simply returns this container, one container. And that's the way React.js expects us to write code. We just simply need to understand that it will return one container over here. And whatever we write inside this container, that's it. That will be the children of this specific container. So in this case, as homepage, we need to write down H1. H1, here we go. This is just normal stuff that we did in part 2. Let's just write home page over here. Here we go. And let me add some paragraph as well. Tap and P. Here we go. We have this P. Hit enter. This is React single page application. Perfect. And we can add another paragraph over here. Again, tap P. Let me add some notes here as well, so that's handy for you. No page reload when you click navigation links, which was exactly the same case when we did that part 2, if you remember. Let me add another paragraph over here. React router. Now what is this React router? Let me just complete it. It shows, hides different components. So this React router, as we talked about, that npm is just another package that we'll be using in our project to make our project just as the way that part 2 was, and we'll be leveraging the power of React router as well, which will abstract some code for us. And again, we don't have to write the bulky code that we did in part 2. In hindsight, it may not be that bulky because our project isn't that huge, but when the project gets bigger, you will understand the power of these packages more effectively. But since we are just grabbing the basics, you will know exactly whatever I'm talking about right now by the end of this video. So I think we are done with this homepage component over here. Well, let's just leave it down there. Our homepage component is ready. Let me just go ahead and create another component, which will be about page component by tapping on RFC. Here we go. Let me just create an about page. Well, by the way, you also need to remember React.js expects us to keep it caps on. Till now, whatever function we had to write in JavaScript, we could write it in lowercase, but we have to write it in uppercase. It's specifically restricted to components. Since components are, written like this function, we have to ensure that the first initial is always caps on. So let me just fix this over here. So let's just flip some part of this, and just like in our home page, we have this heading 1, H1 as about page written over here, and we go downwards. Here we have this component was already loaded with the initial bundle. What do I mean by that? Well, whenever you turn any React.js application open in a browser like Chrome, all the code comes at once. So whatever components you have over here will be, okay, I need to just delete this because RFC just brings everything, because we already got it over here. We don't need it twice as well, we just need it once. So that's it. Well, we were talking about this, the initial bundle. If you remember, just the basics that we discussed in part 1, it just brings on everything with itself, and it just loads up whatever page we are on. So let me add another paragraph over here. React just made it visible. No server request, because everything, whatever we need in a website, just came at once, so we do not need to send those back and forth requests to the server. That's pretty handy. I think we're done with about page component as well. Let's just go ahead and write our last component, which will be contact page. Let me just go ahead and copy this. There we go. Let's just flip this as contact. Here we go. This contact, and I need to change this up over here. Something I need to write specifically for contact. All pages are in one, I just make it caps, one HTML, exactly the same way, just like we had in part 2. I can parentheses over here. Here we go. Since we are using this React.js, which is a library that just transforms our code to a code that we had written in part 2. eventually our code will get translated to the code that we have to write in part 2, and will be in this index.html, exactly the same HTML file that we had in part 2 after build. So once this code gets transformed, only will be converted to this index.html, which is exactly the part 2 file that we created ourselves. Again, let me just change this as well over here. That's why it's called single page application. Here we go. So I think the component part is already done. Now we need to handle the navigation part as well. How are we going to navigate? So we need to learn that as well, that how can we write the navigation part of any project. So let's go ahead and let's just go ahead and copy this exactly the same. Now we have to write that navigation code. There we go. We don't have to export it. Let's just write it ourselves, because that's not the navigation, not the component that we need to export. By the way, you can also make your code bit neat, but you will do exactly in your development journey ahead. You will create separate files, separate folders over here. Specific will be dedicated to specific components like home. You have about, you'll have contact over here, and there you need to use this export. And here you just do not need to use that export, because we are going to be using those components in this same file. You will not be leaving this page, just to make you understand better. So you could go ahead and remove this default and export as well. Here we go. Let's just remove this as well. Here we go. So this is how it's written over here. Since we have to export this main app, as you can see, we are using this import over here. We're importing from app.jsx. We are importing this one, so that's why we are using eventually, this app over here. But here we don't need to use it. Let's just write navigation part over here. Function will have navigation written over here, parentheses. Okay. So I need to use some packages over here. As already told you, npm allows you to use different packages. Let's just go ahead and tap on control plus backtick over here. And since our project is running right now, let me just go ahead and hit on this plus, new terminal, and we have a new terminal. Here we are going to be installing one package, which is also one wonderful and powerful package that we'll be using, and will be called as npm install react dash router dash DOM over here. Hit enter. Here we go, we got it. And now we need to simply use, by the way, this is a prerequisite, in every library, not just React.js. It just expects you to, requires you to write code in a particular manner, in a manner which it understands, It just mandates you to write code in this manner. You have to learn it to leverage the power of React.js. So we're just doing it. And navigation over here. So what we're going to be using over here is const location is equal to use. Okay, as you can see, we have this use location. We tap on it. Here we go. And we just scroll up. Look here, we have this use location from React Router DOM. So the package that we installed in our project has this inbuilt use location. So what is this use location? You tap on it. This is also a function. You don't need to get to the depth, but you just need to understand it's just a function that we'll be using and leveraging the power of this function over here. And when we put on parentheses over here, that means we are calling this function over here. And whatever this function returns, we are just taking that in this location variable that we have created over here. So since we know that in every component in React.js, it returns, so how can we forget to return? So what are we going to be returning? Well, put parentheses over here, since we know that it returns one div, one container it returns, and everything will be part of that container, will be the children of that specific container. In this particular case, we are going to be returning a navigation container over here. Just like that. Here we go. This is equivalent to a container, navigation container, because we need to put that right at the top, like home, about, contact. So we are just going to be implementing that over here. So navigation container, we have set it up over here. And now I need to tap L-I-N-K. Here we go. Is it the same that we need? I think we need that caps link over here. We don't need this one. Okay, we need this one. Here we go. As you can see, React Router DOM gives you this link. So if I tap on it, here we go. We have this link, and we'll be giving some children. And if I go ahead and tap on it, let's just hit tab and write home in there. We have home over here. And similar to that, we'll have different links over here as well. Just copy it. Here we go. We'll have 3 links over here. The second one is going to be about. Third one will be contact over here. And contact over here. Okay. So now we need to have 2 written over here, as you can see. By the way, if you scroll right at the top, you will have link imported as well. That just imports it automatically the moment we tap on that. The initial options, whatever this cursor gives you. So in this 2, we have to write in double quotes. We'll give slash. Okay, this is where our address is going to be. And the next thing we need to write it down over here. We might not need this bracket. The quotes are just well enough. Now we can style them a bit. For style, we have already have those like curly braces on there. We need to give another curly brace, and only then we can write down some CSS inside. I'll give a margin right. Will be 20 pixel. I know you'll be at ease with CSS because we did everything by ourselves in part 2. Here we are just doing it the minimum CSS, whatever we need. That's it. So I think we are all set over here. Uh, we can just do it color. So this color is going to be location. So look, I'm using this location right now. Over here, location, path name. Must have been an object that it returns, and we're just using that variable over here. Path name. Very strong path name. We're not using single, we're using triple equivalent operator over here. It's just checking out, I guess. Let's see what we are going to be doing over here. And what it checks down over here is quotes. Here we go. If it's got, let's just put the question mark over here. So if this path name is like slash, if it's just asking it out. If it's slash, then we need to reward it with a color as red. Okay. And if it's not slash, that's the false statement. If this condition isn't satisfied, that's the false statement and will be followed with a colon over here. And we just need to tap in blue over here. If this condition isn't satisfied, just make it blue. So, well, this is what we need to do. And similar to this, we also need to give 2 over here. 2 double quotes. We need to write about in here. Okay? And here as well, we will write down some styling as well. Same styling, red and blue. Might just need to copy it all together. There we go. We don't need curly braces over here. Just copy the style, margin right. Here, we just need to write down about. All right, and here as well, I just make it 2 double quotes. Will be contact. We want this link to be contact over here. Let's just Command V. We have contact over here. Alrighty, I think we are all set. I think we're all set. So we are closing this navigation container, and this navigation component is ready as well. So let's just go downwards and leverage. Let's just bring it up a bit. Okay, so right now what we need to do is we need to populate this container as well, because this is like the main container. And now we have this like 4 components: home, about, contact, and navigation. We'll be using all of them over here just to navigate between the links. And how we can do it? Well, you can simply ensure that, well, let me just go ahead over here. How can I? Now we need to hit this. And by the way, this is just the way you will be, you know, using different components, just a standard pattern, and you will understand it the more you use it, everywhere. But this link is also a component. We have an opening, we have a closing over here. This is the way you open, this is the way you close. And here also we need to use another like component over here which will wrap everything inside it, and that will be router. Here we go. As you can see, we have this React Router DOM. This is exactly what we need to use over here. Here we go. We have used this component. Now, do we need this div right now? I think we just need one container, or like one, like say, this really needs to have one children. Let's just be precise. It just needs to have one children, and everything else will be a children of that big children that we have over here. So this is just a grandchild of this home page, and this is the immediate child. And just need to have one children. That's it. And there'll be a more, I think, accurate way of describing that what you need to give or return to a component. You just need to have one children over here. Let's just remove this div. This has one children, router, this app, and everything else could be inside this. Now, I can give this div over here. Div. Over here. Now, inside this div, I'm going to keep navigation. So finally, I'm using this navigation component. How can I use it? Simple, open, and navigation. Here we go. The third one we have. And close. This is the way we can use navigation. And we can just single this out by just simply adding a slash space and slash at the end. That's it. We have used navigation component over here. Now, I need to give main after this. So this, again, open main. Here we go. Now, in this main, I need to give routes here, routes component, which will be taken from React Router DOM as well. After just doing this, my personal suggestion would be just to go through this again. Just stack both the parts one against another, part 2 and part 3, and you will see exactly the kind of similarities and the kind of stuff they're aligned with, and you will know exactly the way that differentiates and the kind of difference they have and the kind of workings that React.js does under the hood. And that's incredibly important to just finding that out, because once you find out the internal working of React.js, which you will by putting both these parts together and just simply grabbing whatever is going on out there, you will make a very, very solid foundation, which will be really important for your development journey ahead. So let's just give it routes over here. Here we go. Right down there, we have this routes written. Tap on it. We close this out. Here we go. So in the routes, we need to use another component known as route. Here we go. We have this route written over here. We tap on it, and we can simply ensure that I hit down space slash. Here we go. In this route, we'll be using, here we go, path. In this path, I just literally need to add slash over here. And in the slash, I need to give element. And in the element, I need to pass curly brace. And the curly brace, I need to pass one component. What will be the component? Since this slash demonstrates over here that it's the home component that I need to use, will be a home page component. Again, how do we put in the component? Opening, and this is what I need to give slash over here. Okay, perfect. Simply need to copy. In this one, I need to put in about. Will be about page over here. Okay. And here will be contact page. Okay. And here I need to put in contact as well. I think we're all set over here. So this is the way you need to write code for a React.js. As you can see, we have this app component simply ready right now. So since this app is getting exported and eventually getting used down here, as you can see, also a component are using, you can just get rid of the strict mode. And so now let's just go ahead and check this out and see our Google Chrome. Refresh. Doesn't seem to work. Here we go. I think we're all set. Whatever we had to exporting default app over here about contact. Location. As you can see, one stuff that you would have figured yourself, that whenever we use these components, they get enlightened and they just get highlighted. And before they were like dull, and because they weren't getting used anywhere. So the moment we use them, they just get highlighted over here. So that's what we got it. I think our application is working right now. The change that I did is, I just asked AI that why my application isn't working. I think I just deleted it. Okay. So I just asked AI about it, that why it's not working. So it just simply said that I was using this router initially and I just changed it up, but like browser router over here, and everything else is just the same. And downwards, in place of router, we used browser router over here. And we just close it down with browser router over here. It's just the one big kind of like a children we have over here, and everything else is just the children of this browser router over here. And if we go down to the Google Chrome over here, as you can see, it just turns out as we expect it out to be. So we tap on like about, it just works fine. Contact, everything is just working as expected. And now when we just go ahead and click on inspect over here, and here, then we click on network, So initially, we receive everything all at once. We do not need to send those back and forth requests over and over again. And everything else, the switching between those navigational links, will be done like a breeze. We don't need to send those requests now because we got that code once. I think we got this in our part 2 as well. The main point is the functioning of this React code that we had to, uh, you know, write it ourselves. And by putting both these projects together, like part 2 and part 3, you will know exactly, as I said, what's working under the hood for React.js. I know we just left with that one, the container or like the counterpart that we had introduced in that part 2. We will implement that over here as well. So let's go ahead and quickly implement that too. Before we go ahead and create a counter over here, let me just brush up some of your JavaScript basics, which will be very handy moving forward. Let's go ahead and go to our console over here. Let's just wipe this off for now. Here we go. So let me just declare a variable over here like no, it's reserved. Let's just give it test variable is equal to, let me just give it a number, 100. Hit enter. And if I have to check the test, or check the type of this test variable, how can I do this? Like type of, as you can see, of test variable. Here we go. We have a number over here. So this is how we check the type of any variable by putting in this type of. So let me just create a function because they'll make you understand the concept that we'll be using while implementing counter. So this, as you can see, I already got it there. I checked it out earlier before demonstrating this to you. This will be very handy. So I'm going to be passing some parameter over here, like initial. This is how I'm defining the function. Hit shift plus return. Shift return again. Put the curly braces. Here we go. So here, what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be declaring a variable with let. And we'll be giving a name to this variable like state. And is equal to type of initial. So anyone who ever calls this function and give me a variable or like give me an argument, I'm going to be checking the type of that argument. Okay? So if the type of the argument, just mark my words, and whatever I'm saying is just related to this line of code. As I'm saying, I'm writing the line of code as well because that is equivalent to whatever I'm writing it down there. So I'm just checking this initial type over here. And if the type, this is equivalent operator, and it's just equivalent to, let me go ahead. If I would have written like if type of is equal to, let's just say it's function. So this is how I would have written if statement. And this is just a shorter version of writing down that if statement. And the moment you see these three operators or like equal to signs, that just, testifies that we are using the shorter version of checking the statement over here. That's just like if and else statement, conditional statement, and it just exists in every programming language. So I'm checking it out over here. if the type of initial is function, quotes, we saw that whatever type we get returned by after type of, we get returned in single quotes. That's why we have put this in single quotes as well. So if the type of initial is function, if this initial that is being passed by the caller of this function, and if this is a function, so what I'm going to be doing, this also indicates a conditional statement. I'm going to be ensuring that I call this function. So here the function definition will be given to us whenever a user calls it with a definition, and we are eventually calling it if it is a function. And if it is not a function, well, then simply I need to put initial over here. Here we go. So this is what I need to put. Let me just drag it down and see if this... No, it's not getting... Okay, here we go, perfect. Let's go to the second line over here. Okay. So I hope you got this. Just make sure that you go through this over again and you will get the hang of it. And now I'm going to be declaring a different variable over here, like set state. And here, I'm going to be ensuring that this is a function, and I'm going to be implementing an arrow function over here, like next. The set state variable, I'm passing a function to this variable, okay? Here we go. Return, enter, return, enter. Next. State is equal to type of next. Just going through that process all over again, just like we went over there in above state variable as well. I'm just changing that state variable because I can do that as I've given let over here. So this type of next, if it is a function, that means, just keep following, I'll explain it and just elaborate it in a better way if any of you haven't got it. I'm going to be passing state to this, or I'll simply return with next. So what I have done over here is, well, you just need to remember this, that set state is a variable that has a function inside it. That means whenever whoever calls this shift enter over here, now whoever calls it set state like this will have to call with some variable or like an argument inside, because the set state is a function, and we know that whenever we have to call the function, we have to put the parentheses over here. Whereas this state isn't a function. It could be a function over here, because if this initial is a function, that means we have to call that function over here. So I'm sure you won't be getting it more effectively, but the moment you see that, use state hook, which will implement it in the counter in our project, you will eventually get the hang of it. But for now, you just need to remember this, that we're simply ensuring that set state is equal to a function, and a function will be fed with an argument, and whoever calls it will give some sort of an argument over here. So whoever calls it, that caller could give us a function. If that caller gives us a function, that means we need to call that function with state as our argument. Let me just demonstrate this more effectively in this over here. Here we go. Set state. We know that the set state holds a function. That means let's just go back. The set state holds a function, as you can see. But this is just a definition over here. So if we have to use that function, we have to call that function. And we have to give some argument as well, because we can see here that it is expecting some sort of an argument over here, which we have given a random name, which we can give any name over here in the definition. And this is what the set state is expecting, some sort of an argument. And it could be a simple number, because it gives us, as you can see, it's not mandatory to give the function as this. We can simply pass a simple number or a boolean over here, and anything, and it's not necessarily need to be a function. But we can also pass in our function over here, just like you can see a. Let me just pass, or let me just give a number like 5 over here. 5. You can simply say this, just like this. But this is how I can implement it, because I've given the definition over here. I'm a caller of the set state. I've simply given a definition over here. And when I've given the definition over here, this condition will get satisfied and will eventually call this function with state. So since I also have to give a definition over here, this will be eventually called over here. So the definition needs to be if anyone passes a number, that number will eventually be multiplied with 5. So let's just say a number, and we'll take that number and eventually multiply it by 5. If this sounds overwhelming to you, you need to take a look at that part too, because we discussed functions in great detail in that part. But I don't think so. It's too messy out there. But simply, let me just go back again and just re-explain everything. So what we need to do, if we know that set state, here we go, we have said that the set state is a function, and that function takes an argument. We could give any random name to that argument. The set state expects users or the caller of this function in the future to give it and pass some argument. And that argument, what we have done is over here, we are checking that so what we are doing over here, we are just checking we're just checking the type of over here, type of n. If it's n is equal to function, if this n is equal, whoever calls this, set state in the future, and whoever gives some sort of an argument, if that argument is a function, which is basically, it could be like this, set state, here. Anyone could give a number, like 3 random or any number, or someone could give us literally a function itself. Here we go. And if anyone gives us a function, that's what we are gearing ourselves up for. If this is a function, here we go. This is a function. What we're going to be doing over here, that's what we have. If this is a function, we will call that function with state as an argument. Simply state as an argument. That means n will be passed because we know this n is a function, and function only gets called when we put parentheses. So that's what we have done. If this is a function, which means this definitely needs to be called, and what we have done over here, we are passing with state value inside this function. That means whatever definition we're gonna be giving inside this parentheses over here while calling this function, we just need to consider the state. That means if the state is some sort of a number, we need to create this function keeping that number in our mind, like the way I'm doing right now. And it could be like 5. I'm just multiplying it, but 5, because I'm keeping that state, because in future someone might pass or call this function with state, and I'm just considering that state in my head, and I'm simply calling that over here, just giving the definition. So this is how the callback function gets created. You need to preempt and ensure that how the users or the callers in the future going to call that function. So we know that someone will pass state, so we need to create a function with state in our mind. That's what you need to remember while creating a set state. By passing a function inside the parentheses of set state, you just need to consider that state in your head, that someone will be passing state, and you need to create a function with state in your head. That's it. Let's go ahead and complete this over here. And what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be returning eventually an array over here. This array will return state and set. I need to keep it in lower caps. So this is what I'm going to get returned. Set state will be returned over here. Of course, this is something I think you would have done it earlier if you haven't touched upon this, because this will return an array, and we eventually have to write like this whenever, like this. I could give any name, like just say count, or like set count over here. Will be, if I use this mini use state as, because we know that mini use state is a function, so we know that we need to call it by putting the parentheses over here. And I could simply give a number, or I could also give a function as well, because this includes the scope of me passing a function as well. So I could simply pass a function over here like this as well, whatever it could be, because it's not calling with any any argument inside. So that means I can independently create any function. I don't have to create or keep anything in mind while creating or defining this function over here. That made sense, because if this, just like over here, this has a state inside. So whenever I'm going to be creating this next, I have to create that someone will be passing state as an argument. Here it could be anything like 9. Let's just assume it 9. So why I'm putting this um, const, just in an array over here? Well, the simple explanation is because this function, I know this under the hood that this function returns an array, and I'm simply, receiving the value inside count and set count of state and set state. I hope that made sense. So with that, let's just go ahead and implement the counter. It's going to be a cakewalk from now onwards, and hope you'll grab everything with complete ease. Let me just delete this. I was just checking this. Here we go. Just like that. I'm going to be set count over here. So use state is, there we go. We got use state the moment I tap on it. So use state is a function, or you can say this is a hook in React library that just allows you to flip this project or like application's state. You will get to know exactly whatever I'm talking about in terms of state over here, since this is a function and it eventually returns an array. Do we get anything over here? No, I don't think so. So let's just, it will give, it just returns an array, just like we discussed in console, and we'll take the value in count and set count. Let me just pass 0 over here. And let's just go downwards over here. Need to give a container. And inside a container, I need to give an h2. Let me just count over here. Since I have to include some JavaScript over here, so I'll be putting those curly braces, and I'll implement count just like that. And here I'll implement button. Here we go. And increment inside button. We'll have on click. There we go. Inside this on click, I'll be passing a function. And this set count, we know that this is a function and it takes state as an argument. So I have to create, so this is a function. First of all, with a function, I need to include this, parentheses over here. I know that inside I need to pass a function as well. And that function, we know that takes state as an argument. We'll get state as an argument, so we have to consider that state. Let's just give me state as a random name over here. So what I'm going to be doing with that state is we'll simply be adding 1 to that state. Here we go. I hope it's making sense down here. Since we'll be getting state, we are simply adding 1 to that particular state. So in this case, set count will be getting, because this 0 will be the initial count. If you remember, this is the state and this is the set state. And here we are just, you can also replace it with the count over here. Count. Here we go. This will get replaced at count as well. Well, this is it. Let's just go ahead and check this out. Let's just turn this off. Okay, as you can see, so perfect. So we have implemented counter over here, and just like over here, this is one state. And the moment I hit increment, this just changes the state of entire page right over here. Again, it changes the state. So this is the state logic that you need to get hang on with. And I'm pretty sure that whatever we have explained over here, you might have grabbed with absolute clarity. And I tried my level best to just make it pretty simple. And you'll be using it more often in your project and your development journey ahead. And other than this, I think this is what I have for you. Just keep going through this video back and forth, and you'll get the hang of whatever we have discussed over here. I think this is going to be a wrap for today. We have touched upon all the basics. We have covered both these projects, like I said earlier in the video as well. Just keep both the parts stacked up one against another, and you'll get the absolute clarity about React.js and how it works under the hood, and what kind of abstraction it does, and what kind of code it writes for you. I'm sure you'll understand the worth of React.js moving forward, especially in bigger projects as well. I guess this is going to be a wrap for today. Thank you for your patience. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.